test this.
Hello, everybody. Or I should say g'day, because that'll tell you exactly where I come from. So I am from a very far away place in the land down under. My name's Robert Woodcock. I do claim the most awkward name away from Adam Fish. That's my contribution here today. I'm moderating this session, and it's all about the satellites data acquisition. We have some great speakers with us today to have a chat about this. We are a few minutes late, so I'm just going to dispense with all the introductions and just jump straight in. So, Brian, you are up, and I believe you've got a presentation here, and we're going to try our best to keep you on time.
All right. There we go. I'm Brian Killow from NASA. I work with the Committee on Earth Observation Satellites, CEOS. So I made a presentation yesterday on data cubes. So today I'm wearing a slightly different hat, and I'm giving this presentation on behalf of a group called WIGIS, the Working Group on Information Systems and Services within CEOS, to tell you a little bit about what the CEOS group is doing for Earth observation data provision. And at the very end, there's a tool that our office, Systems Engineering Office, is producing. So to my right, Rob Woodcock is the Vice Chair for WIGIS within CEOS. So if I mess anything up, he can just pound on me and fix me before the end. And Mirko Albani could not be here today. He is the current Chair of WIGIS, and those two are the big leaders here. So the Working Group on Information Systems and Services, this is the core group within CEOS that works all data-related issues. And some of the topics, there are subgroups within WIGIS, and some of those topics are data access, discovery and access, future data architectures, and technology exploration. So I have a chart or two on each of those topics to let you know what this group is doing and their impact. And you can always go to the website and find more. So on the topic of discovery and access, one of the key things that WIGIS has done is pulled together this infrastructure that we call a CEOS data service. This is connected to the GEOS portal as well. But Quick and FEDIO are two ways which you can search through archives connected to satellite data sets. So this connection through Quick, which has a number of repositories it's connected to, and then FEDIO has a different set, they come together, and through one search mechanism through the IDN, you can get at over 32,000 collections and 300 million granules. So what does that mean when compared to other data sets and granules that are out there? Quick and FEDIO represent an enormous quantity. So I never really got the axes on here. We obviously know the axis on the left is the quantity of data or search or granules, and along the bottom we believe are different types. So Quick and FEDIO represent some of the largest volume of satellite data information. So it's the place to go if you're trying to find a data set in particular. So in future data architectures, which is a new subgroup within WIGIS, this has tackled some emerging technological areas. So analysis-ready data, which you will hear from Andrea next, is a hot topic within our CEOS community, and we're pursuing that. Data cubes you heard about yesterday and will continue to come up in several different presentations. A little further down in metrics and data analytics, one thing that WIGIS is doing is looking at how users are interacting with the data. What data are they grabbing and searching for, and can we pull some analytics out of that to better respond to the needs of the data users? So within WIGIS, there's a number of actions or tasks that are being worked in this future data architecture area. One of them is to create a common description. So when we talk about these different layers at the top of data, things like data cubes or the platforms you'll hear about later, the Diaz platforms or other data service layers, all of these interact in different ways, and we're trying to put them into configurations or functional blocks that's sensible. So how do we connect all these? How are they different? How are they similar? And this has been a task that WIGIS has tried to solve or at least coordinate and manage a bit. We're also creating an inventory of public and private best practices, discovery and access of open source software. There's a new open source software inventory that's being built right now. I'm not sure when that is going to be ready, Rob. I know it's in the process now. So our group in Systems Engineering Office within CEOS is actually building the interface and the website to do so, so I believe it's being populated now. So that'll be interesting, and that's something that could nicely feed into the new GEO Knowledge Hub, because it will be an open source software inventory coming from many different areas. And then, of course, analysis-ready data, which you'll hear from next. So technology exploration, there's a lot of things happening here. This group has conducted a variety of webinars and workshops lately. So if you go to the CEOS website, those are announced there, and you can find what's coming up to hear more about future data architectures and how to exploit the technology. So a few things that they're working on. There's a white paper now being developed on single sign-on authentication, which means as a user, you sign on once and then have access to a variety of different portals or a variety of different data services. So this could be true for like the quick and FEDIO searches, where a single sign-on can get you access to crawling a large number of data repositories. And then we're always interested in emerging trends and what we call disruptive technologies. What is new out there and coming in the pipeline that could significantly change how we interact with the satellite data? If you go to the CEOS website and in the WIGIS area under our work, there's a few new activities that have been run by WIGIS, and one of which is a best practice document. So looking at Earth observation data usage, best practices, and guidelines for discovery and access, those are recently published. There's also an area where we announce new data set availability. What we've been trying to promote within CEOS is to get more satellite agencies to release data from their archives. And what we have found is that in many cases, the satellite agencies will produce data that might have been used for defense or security purposes or for some internal purposes. And after a period of time, over several years, it really no longer serves its original purpose, but could now be used for scientific purposes. And so we've been able to convince a few agencies to release some of this data to the science community. And I think we're going to see more and more of that with time. There's a tool that we have developed called COVE, CEOS Visualization Environment Tool. It has over 130 missions linked in there. The idea for this tool originally came from the need to do calibration validation activities and to find when multiple satellites were crossing a single place on the Earth over a given time period. So imagine doing a CalVal campaign in Antarctica over a 10-day period using 8 different satellites, and you need to know when are those 8 satellites crossing over this spot. So that is how this all began. But once we put this tool together, we found out that its use was much larger, and the community has continued to grow. We've got about 4,000 users that go there and use it for various purposes. So what we have now is this ability to crawl through various archives. We have it linked to Landsat Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 because it's fairly easy to do so. So you can look at browse images and figure out where where those satellites have acquired data. One of the more interesting uses of this tool is to predict or forecast the future and where these satellites will be viewing in the near term. So for instance, if you have an area in Central Africa and they're interested in something that's happening in a region and they want to take some in situ data, you can find out exactly when Landsat 8 or Sentinel-1 or Sentinel-2 is crossing over that spot in the next 3 to 6 months. One example I always use is a project we had in Uruguay. They were taking data over a lake monitoring water quality. And they took 50 samples over a 2-year period, and they gave us this data and said, could you take a look at this with your data cube and see if there's anything we can do with the Landsat 8 data? Well, the unfortunate thing was only 1 day out of those 50 samples matched a Landsat 8 data acquisition. And so they've completely changed their acquisition strategy or their sampling strategy, and they now are using the COVE tool to find out when is Landsat 8 coming over, when is Sentinel-2 coming over this lake, and on days when it's not cloudy, and they know exactly when it's coming over, those are the days they're starting to take water quality samples. Well, water quality changes very rapidly, and if you are able to take the samples coincident with the satellite observations, you have a much better chance of getting a really good validation data set. So this is one example of how this tool can be used. Feel free to check it out. And I think that's it. Thank you. Well within the 20 minutes.
True to form, Brian has made up for the lost time we had at the start of this session. So we're now back on time. I just remind everybody, Slido is active and there are some people actually putting on some questions here. Please keep collecting them. We'll do the usual habit of doing questions and answers at the end. So, Andrea, you are up next. Tell us all about Card4L.
Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea Siqueira, and I work for Geoscience Australia. And my main role in the last year or so was to support LSI-VC, Land Surface Virtual Constellation, on the development of the product family specifications for Card4L. So today, I'm going to be presenting on the current and the future work that LSI-VC is undertaking on the Card4L, SEALS Analysis Ready Data for Land initiative. So what you are seeing here is the definition of Card4L. And I will be showing it again later on in my presentation as part of the Card4L framework. But the point here that I would like to make is that there has been a growing need for simplification of data handling and data uptake by users. And the users' expectations, they have been changing, mainly driven by the big data systems and the benefits of cloud storage and computing. So one of the measures that SEALS took to support simplified data handling was to develop the SEALS standards for analysis-ready data. This initiative consists of the data providers removing many of the fundamental data corrections, being atmospheric corrections or terrain corrections. So many or more users, they can use the data for their specific applications, and it may be forest monitoring or water management and so on. The logic behind analysis-ready data work is about how we can maximize the value of Earth observation data. So data must be accessible and ready to use. Programs such as the USGS Landsat and the European Union Copernicus have adopted systematic acquisition strategies and distribute vast amounts of data under open licenses. These programs have allowed an exponential growth in the use of the data, the Earth observation data, And in parallel, computing capabilities and new methods, for example, time series analysis and continental scale studies, have evolved, which made the process and analysis of EO data cost-effective and practical. Currently, most of the effort when users want to develop a new application or a value-added application goes into the data preprocessing. And it's estimated that 70 to 80% of the work is actually on data preparation. Skills and systems for preprocessing are in short supply, so not many end users have the skills necessary for data preprocessing. End users are very much interested to add value to the data. For instance, applying their algorithms for crop monitoring, for forest monitoring, or maybe insurance companies that want to use data to narrow down affected areas by an emergency event, being fires or floods. So we are looking at a present and a future where we need to integrate data from multiple platforms, both because we need dense time series, but also because we need continuity through time. The platforms and sensors will evolve through time, so the system should be future ready for this. So basically, this is the rationale behind the ARD work. So here is a bit of a background on CAD4L. So back in November 2015, the land surface virtual constellation was tasked to define interpretable analysis-ready data products with the context of land. Since then, LSIVC has been serving as the forum for developing and taking forward the idea of analysis-ready data in CEOs. LSIVC developed the definition that I showed in the start of my presentation and the CAD4L framework. Both of them, the definition and the framework, have been endorsed at the CEO's plenary back in 2016. As a result, CAD4L is supporting a lot of work towards the future data architectures, which CEOs is also progressing with. And this work is led by USGS, the European Space Agency, and CSIRO in Australia. In summary, the purpose of CAD4L initiative is to allow users to more rapidly use the data for their applications. That will allow space agencies to maximize the potential of their data more efficiently. However, I should say that agencies, they do not want to take the data too far where it's not useful for a large part of the user community. CAD4L products will not be suitable to everybody, but they should be suitable to a large number of users. Here is the definition. CAD4L are satellite data that have been processed to a minimum set of requirements and organized into a form that allows immediate analysis with a minimum of additional user effort and interoperability, both through time and with other data sets. So CAD4L products are intended to be flexible and accessible products for immediate analysis, suitable for a wide range of users and requires minimum or non-additional effort before using it. Suitable for a wide variety of applications, including time series analysis, and it is interoperable with other CAD4L datasets. Also, the CAD4L products are intended to support rapid ingestion and exploitation via high-performance computing, cloud computing, and other future data architectures such as data cubes. The CAD4L products may not be suitable for all purposes and are not intended as a replacement for other data sets that agencies are developing, are producing. Here is the CAD4L framework, and it basically has three elements. The definition that I talked about, the product family specifications that I'm going to talk about, and the product alignment assessment. So the product family specifications talk about what sort of measurement we are getting from a particular instrument. And in the optical domain, for instance, we talk about surface reflectance. The product alignment assessment is divided into two parts. One is the agency self-assessment, and the second part is a peer review assessment, which is done by the CEO's Calval working group. So, for instance, a particular product will be CAD4L when the product has been assessed as meeting CAD4L requirements by the agency responsible for the production and distribution of the product, and the assessment has been peer-reviewed by CEO's Calval working group in conjunction with the LSI-VC members. So LSI-VC has taken on the responsibility for the coordination and the development of the product family specifications for the CEO's analysis-ready data products. They were for PFS, that's the acronym for product family specifications. They were first developed in the beginning of 2017. Initially, there were three product family specifications: surface reflectance, lens surface temperature, and radar backscatter. Currently, there are another 4 PFS being developed, and they are all in the radar domain. Other product family specifications will probably emerge in the near future, and they will be mainly driven by user needs. So the family specifications are technical documents, so they are not intended to set outcomes. They are intended to set outcomes, not methods, meaning, so the document, you are not going to find any particular algorithm that the data provider should be using to do any atmospheric correction. So that's not methods, it's outcomes. And we have been seeing a very strong support from space agencies for the CAD4L initiative. So the product alignment assessment is the quality assurance of the CAD4L framework. In the absence of this process, any product could potentially be called CAD4L, and the value of the concept would be lost. So the graph on the right represents the steps of this process. So let's say that a provider is interested, a data provider is interested to get a particular data set recognized as a CAD4L data set. The data provider should contact the LSI-VC Secretariat to indicate their interest. Then the LSI-VC SEC will register the proposal and will connect the data provider with the LSI-VC point of contact. And for LSI-VC, we'll have a point of contact for each product family specification. So, and also, the LSI-VC POC will be interacting with the CEO's Calval working group, the point of contact, to facilitate the peer review assessment step. The interactions in step 3 and 4, they are going to happen. We expect that they are going to happen contemporaneous and may take several interactions to be completed. It's not going to be one way and after the other way. It's going to be simultaneous. Once the self-assessment and the peer review process are completed, the CAD4L level will be confirmed, and I should have mentioned that in the documents, there are 2 levels for CAD4L. One is the threshold, and the other one is the target level. So once the level is confirmed, the outcome will be published on the CEO's ARD webpage, which are the step 5 and 6 in my diagram. So the current status of CAD4L is that the three initial product family specifications have been endorsed at the LSIVC 7 meeting this February in Hanoi. The endorsement is a conclusion of over 2 years of work since the agreement of the CAD4L definition and framework at the plenary. The endorsed specifications contain inputs from experts around the world, and it demonstrates the resolution of diverse points of view. And my work last year was mainly to be liaising with, the experts and updating the documents. Also, it shows the emerging acceptance of the concept of analysis-ready data and the value proposition of CAD4L. And the specifications are an essential step towards analysis-ready data. Additionally, we have developed communication materials, which can be found at the CEO's ARD webpage, and as well as further information on the process to assess data sets against the specifications. Also, there is an ongoing work on the interoperability spectrum and how CAD4L fits in as a necessary step. This work has been led mainly by the European Space Agency and USGS. So, as I mentioned before, there are 4 PFS being developed, mainly for radar, SAR. CEO's agencies are undertaking the self-assessment step using their data. The European Space Agency has started their self-assessment with their surface reflectance product, Sentinel-2, their land surface temperature with Sentinel-3, and they are also doing the heritage missions. JAXA is doing the self-assessment for their ALOS mosaics. Geoscience Australia for their surface reflectance products from Sentinel-2 and Landsat, and USGS for collection 1 and 2. Thank you. CEO's CALVAL working group has developed a procedure to undertake the peer review process. I'm not going to be presenting it today, and it should start, the peer review should start still this year. After the review and approval, CAD4L datasets will be cataloged for promotion and easy of access for users. Also, LSIVC is planning to conduct data supply and user access trials, pushing data to online facilities to further easy access and use. Trials with forest monitoring communities have been identified as a priority in the broadest use strategy for ARD, and GFOI is an obvious community. LSI will continue reviewing the PFS documentation and requirements through a controlled process, which is what happened last year. We went through a cycle of gather feedback from technical experts, collate the feedback, submit the proposed changes through a drafting process, and accepted them into the PFS documents, and they were endorsed in February. To finalize, I would like to talk to say that from the 4th to the 9th of November this year, the Australian government will host the 2019 GEO Ministerial Summit and all the events associated to it. So we want to make sure the event provides a platform for the broader EO community to promote its capabilities and find new partnerships with people who they wouldn't normally get the chance to engage with. One opportunity is to meet companies and innovators from the Asia-Oceania region. So one thing that we are really trying to do this year is to engage industry, to engage the commercial sector into the week. We will establish an industry track alongside the formal ministerial meetings There will be a whole range of events for business in Australia, overseas, to get together and promote what they are doing and connect to each other. This will help industry to discover new partners and form new partnerships. The industry track is an opportunity also to talk about how commercial and government actors can align their data to be as compatible as possible, analysis-ready data. I would like to invite you all to come to Australia and participate to the GEO Week. And with that, I finished my presentation. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Andrea. You could just tap your mic there, that'd be good. Thank you. Thank you, excellent. That was, and perfectly on time, I might add. The standard has been set, other speakers, for the timely, yes, it's going well. So Daniel, you're up next. I gather this, given the breadth of the Copernicus program, this is going to be a whirlwind tour, from what I can gather. So be prepared for a lot of information, and show us your wares, sir.
Thanks a lot for the introduction. Yes, thank you very much. So I will go through the perspective on Copernicus and updating you also on the Copernicus program. As you know now, it's almost 21 years that this program has been launched in Baveno in 1998. And last year we have, it was the 20th anniversary. The program has a lot of objectives, a number of different objectives, where I want to, of course, monitor the environment, to increase the general knowledge on the state of the planet, to help managing emergency and security-related situations. There's a broad range of different issues it seeks to tackle. Copernicus is also a contribution, is seen as a contribution to building the GEO-SS, and that has been put in the recital for our regulation, the current regulation. I'll talk a little bit about the next regulation. As you know, Copernicus is a EU program. We are doing through first a regulation where we have the financing capabilities for 7 years. Now we are in 14-20, and the next multi-annual financial framework will be for 21-27. And we have already the next regulation, which is there. So, I mean, this is the program as it is. You have the space segment. You have ESA for the construction and procurement of the satellites, and then you have ESA, EUMETSAT for the operation of the satellite. And we have also a lot of contributing missions. We are not sentinels, but other missions which we need the data for feeding into the services which are in the middle. We have a broad range of services, 6 services addressing a lot of different topics. And we have also a in situ component. As you know, we have seen through all those presentations that the in situ is very important indeed, and is complementing, I don't know which one are complementing, but space and in situ is going hand in hand to allow those services to be provided. Behind all of those names, there are a lot of people. And behind those names of organization, there are private sector providing services. There is a lot of people working for Copernicus. In fact, Copernicus is built on the knowledge of those people. They are key to Copernicus, and they are owing a part of Copernicus. It's a really common endeavor. So we'd like to have Copernicus as user and policy driven. We are really asking for user requirement before providing new services or for the next generation of satellite. It's also policy driven because there is a big task for Copernicus for the monitoring of the environment, which are linked to the European regulation on the environment. We want to be sustainable in the long term, and we commit to that, and we commit to that through those legislation. I was talking just before that we have this multi-annual framework, 7 years, and each time we have a new regulation, taking stock of where we are and pushing further Copernicus. The data policy, also under the regulation, is free, full, and open, non-discriminatory. We are insisting on the fact that what Copernicus is providing as much as data from the Sentinel and the service is made on operational mode. It's not a research project. We are really providing the data and the information according to specific and on time and regularly. So a lot of cross-domain product portfolio. I'll get back to that when talk about the service. There is a lot of international dimension because we are monitoring the Earth, and they are our data on the free, full, and open is available for everybody. We are also making some specific agreement for a big bandwidth delivery of data to certain countries with whom we have agreement. Of course, we are open to new need and requirement that would be for the future generation, and responsive to new technology. Of course, the cloud technology at the moment, we see more and more that there is a real need for such technology, but this is, and we'll talk about the DIAS later, but it's also inside each of those services which are provided. They are really following the technologies in their field. The space component, this is at the moment the constellation of Sentinel missions, the one that have been launched and the one that are foreseen for future. In fact, you see that there are A and B units at the moment flying as a constellation for Sentinel-1, Sentinel-2, Sentinel-3. There's already ESA has been procuring the recurrent, so you at the moment the C and D units, which are built up for ensuring the continuous monitoring. Of course, all of those Sentinel data are producing more and more data. We now, the archive is around 10 petabytes of data. There is a lot of product to be downloaded, and the amount of download at the moment is 130 petabytes. So it requires quite an infrastructure for the dissemination. That's also called for another way to act. This is for those Sentinel. We have the services. A lot of product are downloaded. We are downloading the Earth too many times. I've heard that in a conference, and this is really true. There is certainly other way to do it, and as we have seen yesterday, this is an important aspect, and it can also support different application when you have the data collocated with processing power. Those are the services, 6 services. I'll go through very quickly on the different services. It shows there that there's a search engine, basic search engine, if you want to go through all of the product of the services on the Copernicus service portfolio. You see that there is over 1,000 family of product from the services, so it's also a big variety in each of their domains. We have the global land. This is one of the product of the global land. There is a new product which is the global mosaic, which is on demand. I was talking about new product being on demand. This is one of those where you can ask to have a mosaic of Sentinel-2 level 2 where you have, of course, cloud-free, and you have bottom of atmosphere data, and you have quite a lot of parameter for which you can ask to have a product compute and deliver to you. For the European land, this is the well-known Korean land cover, which is a regular coverage of the land use over Europe. There are also specific, more high-resolution layers, which are looking at the different aspects of the environment Europe. I see the water is last, forest. For the marine service, the sea surface current, sea surface temperature, of course, there are over, 200 products for the marine is really big. I really advise you to look and to search. To search, you have the search tool that I have just discussed before, but of course, when you know what you want to search for, you go into the specific service. To access all of those data, there is copernicus.eu, which is really the portal where you can enter, and you will have all the different links to go to the specific area where you are interested in. This is the atmosphere monitoring service, also for the dust, also a lot of products from them. The climate change product, you have also the climate data store, which is going to be presented this afternoon, I think, by Julia. Very interesting application as well, where you enter your script to get the data, but you will have more information this afternoon. Now we are switching from the Earth monitoring to the emergency. There's a big family of products for the emergency. They are making maps for emergency services. For example, landslide in Ukraine. It's on demand usually from the authorities, the civil protection authorities. And then there's a family of security, where you have just one example. Would presume this is a refugee camp being built up. All of those data, as I was saying, is available on the website copernicus.eu. And you will be, through the links, you will get to the different portals when you get the data. As you can look at this, the system is quite complex for the dissemination of the Sentinel, dissemination for the service. And of course, in view of the difficulty for the user to get the data and sometimes the need to download a lot of data when they are interested in subset of the data, of course, the distribution system now are more than kind to have this subsetting, but for the future, we'll decide with the Copernicus committee to have a new tools, a new way for the user to get the data is to build on top of the data lake and to collocate it with processing power. And that's what you have right in the middle, where we can bring the different users on top of the data. This is the way we have implemented it. You see on the right-hand side what Copernicus has been paying for the scalable storage of Copernicus data and information, then basic tools for the user to get. We have asked the consortium that were bidding for the DIAS to be able to provide of course, the right-hand side, but also the left-hand side, the back office, where you can host different data, third-party data, that you have the licensing modules to be able to manage those data which are not free, full, and open, but may have proprietary license attached to it. And of course, the different layers to discover, to view, discover, process those data. And the key thing, of course, it's at the top on the left-hand side, which are the front office, where third parties that can be SMEs, companies, public authorities, international organizations that can go on top of those DIASes to exploit the data, be it the Copernicus data, but also other type of data, or themselves host their data and then compute them, and to provide services to their own users. There was some monetary data holding and basic services, and then that's what I just explained, the possibility to have third-party data and also to host a whole range of services. Of course, it's important to have a marketplace being built up on top of the DIASes, then also communities building tools and so on. That would be left for the initiatives or either the DIAS or the third party. The idea, of course, and the benefit of it is to have the possibility to have a chaining of services where you have third party that are provided value adding for a limited amount of work, and that can be taken up by another company and then build up progressively. We really want to have the third party to focus on what they know best in the analysis of the data, rather than in all the ICT systems that need to be put in place. From a commercial vendors, I've heard that someone wanted to work a lot on Earth observation. He would pay when he was buying a license. He would pay like an amount for those data that would represent 20% of his overall cost. The rest of the cost would be in hiring the different people for the ICT, the storage, the computing, all the infrastructure that is needed to analyze those data that has been bought. And the DIAS try to alleviate that for the SMEs. Big and last point. Those DIAS are provided for everybody, every third party on non-discriminatory basis. Those third party can set up their own front office and serve their own client without, of course, the DIAS to be upfront. All the IPR developed using the DIAS stays with the creator. This is for them. The DIAS should not have any right on those creation. And what we also try to do is really to have a full environment where people are starting with either a research project or a demo, and then from the same environment are able to grow and to develop it as a business. And that's it. Thank you very much. Those are the address of the DIAS, and they will be presented tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that overview. That is impressive. I'm particularly interested in the relationship around the commercial and the publicly funded aspects you touched on there. We can have some more questions on that. I should let all the speakers know so far we are receiving questions through Slido on session 6 from the audience for all of the presentations so far, so that'll keep that up. Can I ask those of you that are in the audience asking questions and looking at Slido, upvote the ones that you actually want to make sure get asked, because I will use the voting popularity things to actually prioritise the questions when we get to the final session, and we are collecting a few, but we may not get to all of them, so feel free to jump in there, have a look through the list, and quickly just tap that little upvote button to help coordinate the questions. All right, Gunther, you're up next, sir.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning. So I will tell you a bit about SEO's future data architectures. You heard from Brian. This is about data cubes and exploitation platforms, and I present a bit the thoughts and strategy of ESA on that. Now, this drawing is not from an engineer. This is from a professor of economy who tells me that platforms will be an industrial revolution. It will revolutionize the way that you will work, that we will work. And if you don't understand it, you will be left behind like dinosaurs. And I will put some heretic messages today, and I like that. So the old way, he calls it working with pipes. Yeah, you see people who assemble data and algorithms, and it's a supplier-customer chain. Especially in the digital information economy, platforms support what you need to do. You have creators and extractors. Everyone brings into the platform, shares in the platform his resource. Who wants to extract something, uses the platform to create what he needs, and it puts it back. So zero download, absolutely yes. And I don't think, if I heard yesterday, people said, okay, don't download the big data, use the platform to extract what you really need and download this. To do what? To do what? To calculate it in your data center? Erratic message. Public institutions who in 10 years still have a data center might be accused of waste of taxpayers' money. I'm a bit exaggerated, but give it a thought. Now, platforms, what is really important with platforms is about the sharing. Yeah? They enable co-creation, co-engineering, the sharing. Yeah? So we share the ICT. We don't have our own data centers. We share the ICT. Cloud providers help us to do that. It's a big opportunity for the data owners to share their data. Software vendors, I can tell you, 10 years ago, it was difficult to find a tool vendor who had a license for the cloud. Today, almost everybody has it. We have to bring the scientists and the researchers to share their algorithms on the platforms, and the value adders to share their expertise, how you can put all of this together to create information. That's what platforms are for. And then the community, they can extract the information. But extract does not mean that they take it out. Put it back in again. If you want to show it to someone, your handheld device, it's always available on the platform. You can share it there. Now, I give you some examples, some experience that we did on the hydrology thematic exploitation platform. So this is about the Niger River, who is shared among many countries in Africa and tends to create troubles after big rainfall. And we tried an experiment to help these communities to manage the emergencies with this hydrology platform. And it was a very positive experience. You see here from last year, there are 17 countries who shared services, data, knowledge, questions. People share their problems, the results, and you see here 1671, there's a lot of processing that has taken place. It was a very positive experience for these people to work together and to share. And this is what platform can enable. Just a few weeks ago, there was another workshop between these people in Accra in Ghana. So this is going on. This platform is today operational. It's not a project anymore. This can be used operationally. And you see here some of the tools and analysis and environments that these communities use. And you see on the right side, on the top, the several floods that they can compare. Okay, here we are back to my economy professor. Professor Vermeulen, he did last month a speech to the United Nations on digital platform economy that was warmly welcomed, especially as an opportunity also for developing countries. And he is saying, okay, to make a platform a success, these are the 6 elements that he can identify. And I will shortly go through these 6 elements. It's the geotechnology workshop, so I start with technology, but I think we know all of this, no? Cloud computing is really the basis for these platforms, the big data. Okay, we use Docker's blockchain. Be aware of that. We're hearing about the commercial providers. The blockchains are used to do smart contracts. That is really important if the money flows. Artificial intelligence will be the next investment of the agency to get this in. And data cubes. I think there's an enormous potential. I think Geoscience Australia did a big gift to the community with this initiative. And Brian, I'm very grateful that he took that up. I think we can do much more on that. I show this to you in a little video. And I try actually to increase a bit the play speed. It's a bit low. So I think data cubes are suitable not only for the satellite data. Yeah, they are even better for the next level of data. You see here some examples which the users can really use. Yeah, because many more users can use the parameters that we can generate than just the satellite data. And our idea is really we should put this in a cube. And the film that you see is from the Earth System Data Lab. And you see all of these 16, no, it's more than 16, 15 layers that come from the CCI initiative. They are now available in this Earth System Data Lab data cube. We have cubed them, so it's quite easy and clear. No, you see this stream of data that shows how things evolve over time. So you can navigate over time, and you have the different variables just as different dimensions. Because for science, or to really understand our planet, we heard yesterday the problem Julia put it out, the water modeling, we need still a lot to understand. It's important to correlate this information across all of these dimensions. I'll show you a little example. So this is just 4 different variables that for an experiment we correlated together to understand drought phenomenon. So if you play around in a data cube using this analysis tool, you can see create patterns where these 4 and they create little clouds that are more dense and less dense depending on the significance of the event. And if you play a bit around with the sensitivity of these clouds, you see where there were important events. Now let's look at this big cloud over there and see where this is and what this is. So you can see this is over Russia, and actually if you then look back in the records, this is the 2010 drought in Russia. It should come out very soon what this created. So you can very well characterize this type and try to understand a bit better with things like data cubes, what is happening there. I think the rest is publicity. So I need now to be saved by Maria. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Maria, because I would have been caught in YouTube forever if she would not press the escape and return button. So very precious. So we have kicked off. It took a while in ESA to do the best choice. We kicked off just yesterday our DataCube initiative, and it's based on Sentinel Hub and the Earth System Data Lab. You saw the film before. So this is 2 services that are operational today. You can use these services today. Sentinel Hub has 30,000 users. It serves 100 million requests per month. And we would like to enhance what has been done so far by GEOs with this additional layer. And we will, in the project, support the OGC to do the WFS, WMS, WCS new standard based on REST. We heard this, Miko, I think, mentioned it this morning. And the spearhead of this is Stefan Meisel. You see him over there. Stefan, wave your hand. He's the vice chair of the WCS working group. And I think we will have in the future much more simple standards to work with that. Good. I think what I want to point is really on the virtual data cubes that we will set up. We have done in the CCI one of these layers, but if someone really wants to do analysis, he wants to have these layers every year, sometimes every quarter. No one can afford to pre-produce that. Yeah? So one of the features that we want to have is to say, okay, we want to have these layers represented by the base data. So that's important that we do this analysis ready data and things like that, plus the algorithm. And then users can choose what algorithms they trust more. And maybe we have, like in Amazon, the star rating from the users, which algorithms they were fine or less fine, and the problems, we get some feedback. And users can create their layer on the fly at the frequency and at the extension that they need it, not necessarily they need it globally. Yeah? We do believe that clouds are there to support that. Yeah? We invest in this now. It has a nice side effect. If you start to create things virtually, you can have the map projection, the grading that the users want. Especially in Europe, each country has its own map projection. And some applications need a 5-meter grid and some need a 30-meter grid. And if you calculate on the fly, you can use this easily. But the most important thing is where we want to lead the data cube to, that it becomes a platform where people share, where they share their algorithms and where they share their data. And next heretic thing, we are free and open and we invite commercial layers. If we invite that people share their data there, they remain the owner of the data, they decide at which conditions, who has access to them, you want to be paid for usage, you are welcome. So far on technology, and I've eaten quite some of my time, community. So the other thing is invested is thematic exploitation platforms. We do believe we need to engage with the communities. Platforms should speak their language, not our ICT talk. They will come to platforms if they feel understood. If their needs are understood, then they will give their feedback, and they have to understand we want to support them to share data algorithms and expertise. Then they will stay and use the platform. Here's an example of the urban thematic platform. So you see that the GEO browser analytics tools, it speaks urban. It's analytics tools that you can use only for urban applications. The community forum speaks about urban problems. It does not speak about space and Earth observation. And also here I have a little film, and this is, and also here I can maybe put this a bit ahead.
Coastal organizations no longer need to develop sourcing data, storage. Coastal Tech will enable automatic monitoring and early warning systems for pollution discharges, harmful algal blooms, and storm surges.
So the really good thing about the Coastal Tech is its potential to mobilize huge quantities of coastal information currently not in our observation data.
Users of Coastal Tech can easily compare data sets over a common area or period of interest, creating long-term analyses and monitoring capabilities. Forestry Tech will offer on-the-fly processing capabilities based on Copernicus and other satellite data. Forestry Tech is a one-stop shop for everyone involved in forest ecosystem monitoring and sustainable forest management.
La idea de poner una plataforma de información forestal, una plataforma de información en donde podamos tener información reciente, información histórica, información de los análisis forestales que estamos haciendo actualmente, se vuelve fundamental para la correcta toma de decisiones.
Easy-to-use push-button functionalities provide simple, value-added products, such as forest maps and vegetation indices. The GeoHazards tech is already being used by more than 20 geoscience or risk management organizations. Satellites help model the physics of earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, subsidence. The GeoHazards tech gives direct access to vast collections of satellite images and innovative processing change for geohazard monitoring and disaster prevention. Exploitation of big data goes far beyond the resources of individual users. HydroTech tackles major challenges faced by water management users dealing with big data, such as diversity of data sources, volume of data, different data formats. Users can easily create extensive time series analyses for mapping the frequency of floods and droughts, and monitoring water productivity over large river basins and entire continents. HydroTech encourages ever greater participation of the user community. Satellite data have greatly advanced the modeling and monitoring of change in the polar region.
Earth observation has a unique role in the polar regions, providing many sources year-round and wide area coverage.
PolarTech enables users to access and exploit this information to support their operations in science as efficiently as possible. The PolarTech is open to scientific researchers, industry, local indigenous populations, regional and national government. By the year 2050, the number of people on the planet is estimated to reach 9 billion, and 70% of those people will be living in cities. Urban tech enables development banks and urban planners to benefit from the extensive information satellite data for infrastructure planning.
The urban tech will provide a tremendous service to all of us working with the world's cities. Where are the slums and where are the new areas? Is there enough space for parks, playgrounds, and streets?
Urban tech unlocks the information contained in satellite data and makes it available to the non-expert user.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for releasing me. So you will have realized that this video is fake because you have seen sunshine over Ireland. So we know all that this is not possible. Now, the tabs are now operational industrially operated services, independent from ESA. We have mastered the technology. Now we have to master the rest. Content. Content is important for platforms. At the end, I will say the data cube is not so important technology. People will use the data cube where they find the data. So we have to populate with content. Data is one thing. There's also other things, algorithms, expertise. This is where what can be shared on platforms. The tabs today have 92 AO services readily available for the community, which industrial actors share there. And you have some examples. So you have on fish farms and earthquakes and volcanoes, things that have been done. This is an example of the forestry, geohazard, and the food security tab of these 92 services that are readily available. This is not end information services because this is just platforms. Okay, this is services that you can use then to do your real thing, your science or your information system. And you see here how to do things. So Urban Tab as example, you find some video tutorials, for example, on how to do things. Okay, culture. Now, the culture is really important for platforms. Users are sensitive to that. And the openness is one of the most important characteristics of platforms, but it's often mistaken as free. Yeah? Open means open, not necessarily it's free. Yeah? So heretic again, payable for commercial use, yes, why not? And we say industry often can give a better open, because open means non-discriminatory use than public entities, because public entities have their sponsor and they're limited on whom they can serve, by who pays it. Industry is who pays can use it. So I think it's a perfect asset that we invest. Most important for me is the sharing aspect. And really we should realize it should come out of an abundance of resources. We have an abundance of data. We have an abundance of processing resources. I mean, Google and Amazon don't give you the computing power that they sell. They give you the computing power that they don't use. There's an abundance. Let's use it. And people are happy to share that. Of course, there should be a fair return. And I say, selling is not smelling. Yeah? So everyone can understand. If you want to have some money back, why not? It's also recognition. Of course, there's a good reason to donate things, open and free, and everyone is invited. But important is to share. Yeah? Get your return, pretend your return, respect the people who share, offering them in return. Just don't tell them you should share because you should. You see here is one feedback from a lady who is just happy because a professor has used her contribution. Yeah? So pride is recognition, is important driver for people. Relationship. Platforms are there to build relationships, and the most important asset in relationships is trust. We invest in this. IPR is an important asset, and let's say in the network of resources where we try to create a platform offering, we promote the Charter of Values that was done by the value sector, who are very sensitive on the IPR of the algorithms, and this is where they don't want to go to Google. Yeah? But also physical meetings like this. This is important to bring the communities together. At ESA, we invest a lot in that. We have at least every 2 years for each single community a big conference, hundreds of people that discuss their problems. Plus, we have now in 2 weeks' time, there's the Living Planet Symposium in Milan. There's 3,000 to 5,000 people. I've put in the presentation the highlights on the platform stuff, and you can meet in the first event here. There will be Professor von Meulen himself presenting what he says, and there will be Andreas Weisbach from European Open Science Cloud. Last slide, leadership, and I think I've just finished my time. So leadership, what we have to understand, you don't say yourself you're a leader. It is a perception of the community if you're a leader, and this means you have to interact with the community, understand what they need, and give them a vision corresponding to their needs. And I think here, GEO can help a lot, and I think GEO leadership to promote the uptake of this digital platform economy by all the stakeholders will be an important driver for all of us. Thank you.
I was very tempted to push this intervention button that's on this thing here. I'm wondering what it does since I got in here. Just like the floor open up and you disappear, or just nuked in your chair, just a mushroom cloud, that's all that remains. Unfortunately, you finished just in time, so I won't get to find out what it does, which is most unfortunate. So Brian just wants to push it anyway. That's because you're an American, isn't it? Okay. Now I've been politically correct in an international forum. On to the Sentinel Hub. Gregor, over to you.
So thank you very much. It was mentioned a couple of times already now in this session how much of data we have, and Daniel was mentioning just about Copernicus, and it was petabytes of data, and if we count into also the USGS and all the other international institutions which will hopefully share the data as well, I mean, there's really a huge amount. And what I think we have realized in the past years, but it's really just the past years, that we can no longer process the data by downloading it on the desktop computers. I mean, just like 3 or 4 years ago, that was normal, but now I think it's no longer normal, right? And how people approach that in the first place was to use the clouds. And I think that Amazon here did the very important step when they created this open data initiative, where they copied quite a few of the large data sets, not just the Earth observation ones, but also the others, so that they could make others use them in a free manner. And now the European Commission followed with initiating the diocese, which Daniel mentioned. And I think so, and then we also have the Google Cloud. So I think that the infrastructure really is no longer an issue when working with the Earth observation data. There is more than enough of infrastructure and data being available. However, it's still challenging to work with it. And as Gunther mentioned, I mean, it's difficult to understand all this data. It's difficult to know how to work with it. And even if you are the Earth observation expert, I mean, it's problematic. It's problematic because it's costly. It's a lot of resources and time needed. If you are not an expert, it's chaos, because you really don't know what are the JPEG 2000 formats, what are the projections and all this stuff. And you have now in this community lots of people who don't know anything about the satellite data. They are the data scientists, they're the computer vision scientists, and they really don't want to bother with this. So the approach that was usual, and that was presented also by Geoscience Australia, who pioneered this, is to kind of stack the data in a uniform way so that you can easily get to the parts that you wanted, so that all the heavy lifting was done beforehand. However, that is challenging as well, especially now with all the amount of data that you have, because I mean this is becoming expensive. It's becoming expensive because you need to process all this data, and also you need to store all this data that you have processed. And I mean now in the world where you have the data freely available on all these platforms, where you don't need to pay for storage, it's becoming an issue if you now suddenly need to pay for petabytes of storage that you have created yourself just by regridding the data, right? But that's not all. I mean, there are also the other challenges. Again, it was already mentioned that which projection to use, which gridding to use, but it's also like which digital elevation model to use. Should we use the SRTM or should we use the national one? So you have different user communities which have different needs, and they all want to have things done in a bit different manner. So as soon as you pre-process something, it's fixed, it's set in stone, and it's difficult to work with it. So this is where Sentinel Hub kind of comes to the rescue, as we like to say, which basically does a very similar thing than these data cubes in the old-fashioned name. So it provides clear and easy access to the data in a fast manner over a set of OGC compliant and proprietary services. So on the outside, it's very similar to the data cubes, but where it's different is that there is no pre-processing done. So everything here is done on the fly, meaning that we don't need to copy any data. We don't need to pay for the storage of the data. And also it's flexible because user himself how he wants to have data stored. And because we don't store the data, it's also quite cost efficient for us to operate, and it's also then quite cost efficient for users to use. I mean, just to give you an order of magnitude, I mean, like for 50 euros, you can get 1 million square kilometers of data out of this service. So it's really, really not costly. So we started with the OGC services, but now we are more and more focusing on the APIs, because what we notice is that the OGC standards are no longer serving all the complexities of the Earth Observation Society. The standards are evolving, so that's a good thing. However, the tools also need to adapt to all these new standards. Otherwise, the standard don't matter that much. So I think there is a bit of a work needed to be done here. But by then, there are always the APIs which you can simply use. And we notice that more and more people are using the data not in a visualization mode, but rather they use it for the data science, for machine learning, and so on. So it needs to really be served in an appropriate manner. So basically, Sentinel Hub is an API similar to all the other APIs. And here, if you want to get the data, you don't say, I want this and this scene of, I don't know, Sentinel-2. You say, I want data in this area of interest on this time period, processed in this way, at this resolution, at this grid. And then all this magic is done in the back end, and so that you get exactly what you need. And it's pretty simple to use for those who don't know it. So you get access to the configuration utility, where you can even set up the things visually if you're not keen to using API too much. You choose the data source, and then you choose the processing algorithm that you'd like to use. Most of the people decide to put some of their own ones, because those that are there, even though there are hundreds, are never exactly as the ones that they would like. So they fine-tune it a bit, and then you visualize it, and then you can get exactly the same thing in your own GIS environment immediately with just a few buttons, right? And this is kind of how the typical API look like, I mean, with all the typical RESTful interfaces. What is important is that you can get the data either as original reflectance values, if you like, exactly as they were in the raw data. You can get it visualized, or you can get time series statistics. I mean, whatever you want, all of it is available there. One very important thing that we have developed is this custom algorithms which you can put in the system, which makes it possible for users to define what they want to get out of it. And it goes from the basic stuff that we are all used to, like true color, false color, then indices and custom band combinations. But it goes also to the more complex stuff like neural networks. I mean, you can put a neural network like a leaf area index in it, and you will get it processed immediately everywhere in the world without any limitations whatsoever. Because, I mean, what these custom scripts that we started here are really a powerful tool, because it makes it possible to share the knowledge in a very uniform manner. I mean, sharing a paper and getting some information from the scientific paper is difficult, because you really need to understand all these details. And then how to map this into the code. Having an algorithm in front of you, that's really trivial, right? You just take the algorithm and then tweak it to whatever you need. And this is why we established the repository of all these custom scripts on a GitHub, open source. Anyone can contribute, anyone can comment, anyone can revise. So it's managed, but it's really fully open, right? And you have like a couple of hundreds of algorithms there which you can choose, and then you can fine tune and tweak for your own purpose. And what we are really keen on seeing how people are using all this data, because there are really so many different backgrounds, interests, and know-hows that people have, and then they use it in different ways. Like the guy in the middle, he's from UK, and he's looking for illegally irrigated areas in the drought affected region. Then the one on the right, he's using it to observe the US military building an airfield in Niger, in Africa. I mean, things that really were not possible and wouldn't be possible if all of these services were not open so that anyone can really access them, right? Because we wouldn't think about all these things by ourselves. So there are some advanced functions already available, and obviously we are developing more of them. Like, I mean, typically you can do pen sharpening, you can do string classification filtering. You can get auto-rectified gamma knot directly from the service. So like as close as it gets to analyze read the data on a global level, immediately accessible. Then there are multi-temporal processing. That's a nice thing because it allows you to do some more advanced processing on top of it. Like a typical thing would be the maximum NDVI. That's easy, right? But so this is the normalized burn ratio before the fire and after the fire. And now if you combine this in a simple script and you simply deduct these two indices, and then you can get the result which shows which areas were affected and which not. And all of this, again, is done in a couple of minutes on the fly. And then once it's done, you can run it on the whole globe. Auto rectification is again done on the fly. So and at the moment we use the digital elevation model available on Amazon. But soon it will be possible also to define which digital elevation model you'd like to use, because there is no reason that this would be fixed in stone, because I mean, it's just the data set for us, right? So this guy said it very nicely on how it's really easy now to work with all this data and how it's easy to define what you'd like to do and then just to compute it. And because, I mean, this is done on the GEO browser, which is free. Anyone can use globally, just you need an internet. It's becoming really accessible. At the moment, Sentinel Hub supports all the Sentinels, Landsat 8, Landsat 5 and 7 over Europe. We are still waiting for USGS to put Landsat 5 on Amazon so that we could access that as well. Then MODIS digital elevation model data. And what we just added recently is getting your own data in the system. So this is going into this platform way. So because people have their own data and they also create their data. So it's not just about getting your own satellite imagery, but also, I don't know, you create a land cover using some machine learning process, and you'd like to get this land cover in the system. And at the moment, it's very simple. You simply create the cloud optimized geotype, which is becoming a set of a standard. You copy it to one of the clouds where we serve our systems, like Amazon, Creodias, Mundi, or alike. And then you use the API, and then get this data to the Sentinel Hub, and you can either share it publicly, or you can share it just with whoever you want. A very important part of the API is that it's fast. So most of the requests are processed in under half a second. So you can put this into the live environment. And I mean, we have users which build the web applications, which are simple client. They don't have any backend at all. They are client, and they do all the processing in the browser, and then they use Sentinel Hub as a backend for the satellite data. So we have users from all of, I mean, from not all, but many fields. The most used one is obviously agriculture, because the Sentinels are really perfect for agriculture. But then it's also a forestry environment, oil and gas. We have a large mapping corporations using it, a lot of research users, and we have also lots of users who we don't know who they are, because they can simply come to the platform, register, and then they use it. So there is a 30-day trial, so they don't even need to put a credit card in. They simply use the system as it is. Some examples of the precision farming applications. Then this is the digital globe secure watch application using Sentinel data, and then combining it with their own VHR imagery. So this is becoming really powerful. So as mentioned, the system is used quite a bit. More than 100 million requests per month. we manage about 5 petabytes of data in the system. And what's really cool is that we don't need to pay for any of these 5 petabytes, right? I mean, we cannot afford that. We are a small company. So none of this is paid for by us. We simply use the data that are available on the cloud. When having all this data under control, we started to think into the machine learning world, because we need to find ways how to extract more data more information out of this data. And then what we realize is that although you have lots of frameworks available for the machine learning, like you have TensorFlow, MXNet, Caffe, and they're really very good frameworks, they're not really fine-tuned for the Earth observation data. I mean, they were made for cats and dogs and faces. And then when you put in all the complexity of shifting pixels, haze and clouds and all this stuff, it's getting problematic. So this is why we decided to build the EOLearn package, which is a Python library, which basically makes it easy to prepare the data so that you can work with all these existing frameworks in it, in a Python environment, which is the best one for the data science. And when we were doing that, we were kind of thinking, should we put this for ourselves so that we have some competitive advantage, or we just put it open? And we decided for open for a simple reason, because we can never do all the things that we would like to do, because we are just, I don't know, a couple of tens of people. And if we want to really have some impact, we need to put this open so that then people can build on this themselves. And they want to have it open source if they want to start using something. And we are most keen to see that the people are really using that. And we have like large users who come and they contribute even to this. I mean, that's something that you're just dreaming that people will actually contribute the code, and they started doing that already. And anyway, you can build a complete workflow with EOLearn. Like if you are starting in machine learning in EO, there is a Jupyter notebook which has all steps from start to end to doing a basic land cover classification, which is probably what the first thing that anyone does in this world. And you can get all the data, training data for Slovenia, for the whole country of Slovenia, and then run the process, and then you change the data to whatever you are working with, and you change the AOI, and then you have things running on your own for your own use case, right? So when working with that, we realized that maybe some things cannot be done on the fly. I mean, for the machine learning, for the modeling, you want to have the data really ready, packaged in the let's say, appropriate data cube model. And this is where we started to think about the cubes. And so the first step that we did was the Sentinel-2 Global Mosaic, which Daniel mentioned, which basically it just facilitates Sentinel Hub to do all the mass processing, so that at the end you have the data available on the clouds, which you can then use in whatever framework that you would like to use. But then we are now going one step forward with the on-demand data cube, as we call it, where you can simply define, I would like to have the data prepared in this and this format, this area of interest, this time period, with algorithms that you would want to choose. And then you basically click run, and then it processes. I mean, you will have to pay for the resources, obviously, but it's just the resources. And then at the end, you end up with X-arrays, which are there on the cloud, which you can then use in the Python environment or any other environment that you like. And we will put an effort to integrate this in the Open Data Cube, because we find it as a very important initiative on the global scale. I mean, to some extent, all these services, Sentinel Hub services, already are integratable in the Open Data Cube because they're based on the OGC services. Here we'll go one step further to also explore these multi-temporal aspects. One example of how it's easy to build global scale applications with modern technology. You all know the Joint Research Center and Google initiative on this global surface water explorer, where basically they calculated all the world of the Landsat data, and so that you could get for each pixel how much water it was there. And we wanted, I mean, this ended in 2016, but then we wanted to continue. And obviously we don't have the budget of Google or Joint Research Center. So we did it in a different manner. We said, okay, we'll only be looking into the lakes that are relevant, that are in the areas which are, let's say, under threat. So it's about 10,000 of lakes at the moment. And then we'll only be looking for that specific pixels, right? And we managed to do a similar system. But what is important is that this thing costs tens of euros per month to operate. So it's really nothing because it's so little data, right? So to conclude, what I think is very important when we are talking about all these clouds and data cubes and so on, we need to design systems which actually produce more value than they cost. I mean, so today in the cloud environment, it's so easy to run thousands of virtual machines and you feel powerful. But at the end, I mean, if it will cost you more than you will get from the users, I mean, this can only last for this short period, right? It's very important that it's flexible because you will never be able to figure out what users want. I mean, you need to have it in a way that you can extend it. And having system doing things on the fly, I mean, if we see that there is a bug, we fix it and it works immediately on the global scale. We don't need to process anything. And I think it's very important that we don't focus only on the results, like, I don't know, this is a nice NDVI or a land cover. We need to build tools which other people can use to build the tools further on so that then this grows further than one person can do. And last but not least, I think that we need to really empower people to use the Earth observation data in appropriate manner. And I'll conclude with a slide for a commercial for our contest for the custom scripts, which because we figure out that people don't know how to use the EO data, and we want to show that it's easy. So we have this contest which lasts until 5th of May, and I would want that each of you in the room who know something about EO to go and put the script in. It takes you half an hour, and you can even win a trip to Israel. That's the best award. But the point is that you share the knowledge. Thank you very much.
I didn't get to push that button again.
Sorry,
we're all too good.
Left.
I mean, this is like, come on, 10, 9, 8, no, I didn't get to. Literally 5 seconds left. It was just so frustrating. Anyway, so look, we have a lot of questions coming through. We've hit 20 questions. That's a lot of questions. All right, so if you're looking at Slido, get on there, push your upvote button. I'll be doing live checking to make sure we get the top popular questions actually asked. So I have to say that's actually, if you look at all of the tools that are available there, that's actually frightening just to navigate and understand what's going on and what's available to people. I think that in and of itself is a challenge for us as a community. Just wow, what can you do? And also the ramifications of the data and the sources and the combinations of data and what that means for actually doing things like managing our planet. Something that struck me this morning. Yesterday we had that picture that had the little dots. It was drawing the world and it had the dots, and they were talking about doing a census. And behind every one of those dots was a person, a family, a father, a mother, a dog, a cat, a cow, a sheep, a whole pile of things. We're counting like planetary wide all of these aspects that make it possible for us to help manage our planet. And that's really quite astonishing because these tools help us do that in like a few moments at relatively low cost. And that just astonishes me that this is what we're attempting to do, and it is indeed what we're starting to achieve. So having segued a little bit, we've now got a new vote come through on the most popular questions, which is what I thought would happen. So here we go. The top number one question coming through is, there are already too many APIs for Earth observation access. How do we join forces to have a common API for different platforms? Now I'm going to open that to the platform because several of you have touched on this topic. So who would like to go first?
I want to do that. I don't think we should join API into one single API because then we are again losing the flexibility. I mean, it's not a problem. You have a couple of APIs, you have a marketplace or whatever, a web page which shows all the APIs, and then you see which of them there are, and then you pick the one that you need. I mean, if we go into the automotive industry, which is very well industrialized, they don't have just one supplier for tires. I mean, they have a couple, and then you combine the ones that you find relevant, and then you build your own vehicle. And I think that it's better that we have more APIs, and then you simply choose the one that fits you best.
That was a very passionate plea, wasn't it? Okay, next.
Okay, maybe
I want to moderate this a bit.
That's my job. Okay.
That's your job.
Intervention.
So I think it has to be clear. This was industry voice, and we should hear industry voice. It is a sign that really a revolution is going on. There's a lot of things that will grow now. That's normal in this moment. Let's see what remains. It means that the standardization bodies are not fast enough behind what's happening. So industry needs new standards. What I would still recommend is if you could agree to take OGC as a focal point, and let's say they will have now with WFS, WMS, and 3.0, they will try to make things simpler. Let's all support that.
Anybody else want to have a go at this one? No? Can't tempt you. All right. Okay, so that's an important question. And I'm sure it will be hotly debated, as all standards-related questions are, for decades, and it's still going. Anyway, question number 2 that's most popular. Actually, we're tied for most popular now for the second question, so let's just go with the first one that comes up in Slido. Can you explain more about the in situ part of the Copernicus program? Who sets the priorities? How are decisions being made? How to connect to this? So I'm guessing, Daniel, this is for you.
Thank you. Okay, so historically, the in situ part in the Copernicus system is provided by member states. So the idea was that the funding from Europe would go to the satellite and also to the services. And for the in situ, that would be a contribution for member states, who, by the way, are also contributing to the budget of the EU. But the way it has been set out is that it is usually the services who get access to the in situ they need. And most of the time, they are not duplicating the dissemination system for the in situ. This is also following the INSPIRE principle, where it is the data holder who are providing the data that stay the source of the data. And this is for the in situ. Now, when there is a need, and that was introduced in the last regulation, when there is a need to have a unified access to the in situ, then it is the European Environmental Agency who is providing this service, and it's named CORDA. At the moment, it is available only for the Copernicus services. It may be available to EU member states, public authorities in another enforceable future that I don't have much information about that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, there's been some late changes. It's a bit like a horse race, watching Slido votes. So for the few of you coming in and voting again. So this is a question out to Brian. Could you please elaborate more on the open source solutions WGIS inventory? What is being considered, licenses and interconnections?
Sure, you don't want to answer that? I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I just know that WGIS wants to pull together an open source inventory. We're building an infrastructure to host that and to make it